Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's jump straight in, because today we are looking at one of the most drastic overnight legal shakeups in modern history. We're diving into post-war Japan to figure out exactly why the oldest continuous monarchy on Earth suddenly stripped away the royal status of its very own family. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what happened, we need to start with a pretty shocking number: 51. On October 14, 1947, 51 members of the Japanese royal family were abruptly fired, literally struck from the Imperial household register. In a single day, they lost their royal status, their guaranteed income, and any future claim to the chrysanthemum throne. They went to sleep as royalty, and they woke up as regular citizens. Now, these 51 individuals made up 11 cadet branches of the imperial family. Think of these as the collateral lines, the extended networks of cousins and uncles to the emperor. And it wasn't just titles they lost. They actually lost the single written character in their surnames that marked them as royal, the kanji for palace. Imagine waking up and finding out your actual legal name has been altered to push you into this harsh post-war reality. All they had left was an ordinary Japanese family name and a really disorienting fall from grace.
And the financial reality? It was absolutely brutal. For the former princes who had military records, which was about 11 of the 51, they were left with exactly 0 yen in state compensation. A big, fat zero. Some household heads did get a small one-off payment, but those who had served in the armed forces completely cut off.
So, this brings us to the big question. Why? Why did the world's oldest dynasties suddenly fire its own family? Why did Emperor Hirohito and the American occupation forces work together to just aggressively hack away at the royal family tree? Well, to understand why the imperial status had to change so drastically, we have to look at a massive ideological shift.
Section 1. From divine to symbol, the ideological shift.
This ideological shift is the absolute foundational reason why the imperial status changed. The entire philosophical playbook of the monarchy was being rewritten, and the contrast is pretty jarring. Pre-1946, under the Meiji Constitution, the emperor's legitimacy was deeply rooted in Shinto myth. We're talking about a divine lineage tracing all the way back to the sun goddess Amaterasu. But post-1946, under a new constitution drafted largely by the American occupation, the emperor was strictly redefined. No longer divine, he was now purely a symbol of the state, deriving his position from the will of the people, not divine right.
And what's wild is that Emperor Hirohito actively participated in demystifying himself. In his New Year's address on January 1, 1946, which is famously known as the Humanity Declaration, he explicitly stated that the ties between the throne and the people rely on mutual trust and affection, not on, quote, mere legends and myths. By rejecting that mythology himself, he paved the way for this new symbolic role.
And this wasn't just talk. It turned into real legislative action, fast. It's like a domino effect. Surrender in August 1945, the Humanity Declaration in January 1946, then the new Imperial House Law in January 1947, legally subordinating the royal family to the democratic constitution. All of this legal architecture culminated directly in October 1947, when those 51 royals were formally expelled. Section 2. Dismantling the military elite, taking down the scaffolding. But ideology is only half the story. We have to look at the practical reality, too. These 11 princely branches, they were absolutely not just decorative figureheads hanging out in palaces. They were the dynasty's military scaffolding. Every male prince was expected to graduate from the army or naval academy. Guys like Prince Fushimi Hiroyasu held ultimate military ranks, serving as chief of the Navy General Staff. They commanded armies, administered territories, ran war operations. If the Allies were going to demilitarize Japan, this royal military scaffolding literally had to be torn down. Section 3. Scapegoats for the throne. MacArthur's strategic calculus. This leads us right into the intense political maneuvering of the occupation. General Douglas MacArthur was running a very specific, ruthlessly pragmatic cost-benefit analysis. He needed scapegoats to protect the emperor. There were loud voices among the Allies demanding Hirohito be tried as a war criminal and the whole monarchy abolished. But MacArthur realized that if he executed or imprisoned the emperor, he'd have to deploy an estimated 1 million occupation soldiers just to maintain order and stop guerrilla resistance. So the mathematically elegant solution? Keep Hirohito as a compliance symbol to legitimize the American reforms and cut away the rest of his family.
The ultimate example of this scapegoat strategy was Prince Nashimoto Morimasa. He was a 73-year-old former field marshal, the oldest of the branch heads. MacArthur had him arrested as a Class A war crime suspect and tossed into Sugamo prison for 4 months. Historians widely view this as the prince being held as a political hostage. It was a very loud, very stark warning to guarantee the emperor's complete compliance. The collateral branches essentially bore the legal peril so the main trunk could survive. Section 4. Economic starvation tactics. Bankrupting the aristocracy.
So once the titles were gone, how did the occupation make sure these former royals couldn't just use their massive fortunes to buy their way back into power? Well, they used a brutal legal mechanism. Pre-war, the imperial family's wealth was untouchable, completely separate from the national treasury. But Article 88 of the new constitution changed all of that. It just flatly declared that all property of the imperial household belongs to the state. Just like that, the estates, the villas, the vast financial resources, legally confiscated.
And whatever personal wealth they managed to keep, the government hit them with the 1947 capital tax levy. This thing extracted an astonishing 85 to 90% of their remaining assets. Imagine losing 90% of everything you own overnight. This wasn't just a loss of status, right? This was a total system-wide financial reset designed to permanently kneecap the old ruling class.
Prince Fushimi Hiroaki summed up this devastation perfectly. He pointed out that the meager severance payouts they did get were instantly swallowed up by the crazy post-war hyperinflation. The former royals were forced into what got called a bamboo shoot life, meaning they had to peel off their possessions layer by layer, auctioning off their mansions and ancient family heirlooms just to buy food on the black market.
Section 5. A modern succession crisis. The pruned tree today. Now let's fast forward to today, because this historical event has massive modern consequences. That brutal strategic pruning in 1947 definitely solved an immediate political problem for MacArthur, but because those 11 branches were expelled, the pool of potential heirs shrank drastically. Under the law, only males can inherit the throne. Plus, when female members marry outside the family, which they have to do now because there are no cadet branches left to marry into, they legally lose their royal status. The royal family is, quite literally, running out of members.
And this brings us to an incredible piece of foresight. Back at a farewell dinner for his departing relatives in 1947, Emperor Hirohito told them to conduct themselves with the awareness that a time may come when they might be required to succeed to the throne. He saw this coming a mile away. He looked at the math of a monogamous dynasty facing a declining birth rate, and he knew that pruning the tree that aggressively would eventually threaten the survival of the main trunk.
So, the big debate in modern Japanese politics right now is how to fix this. It generally boils down to 2 options. Option 1, absolute primogeniture, which means granting equal succession rights to women, so princesses can inherit the throne and stay in the family. Option 2, favored by conservatives, reinstate the male descendants from those exact branches that were expelled back in 1947.
But grafting those branches back on today, it's kind of a logistical nightmare. First off, these families have lived as everyday commoners for over 70 years. Second, during that desperate post-war struggle, some members fell into financial ruin or controversial businesses or social scandals. And third, we live in a digital age. You can't just erase the digital footprint of the very human, secular lives these families have led for 3 generations. They just aren't viewed by the public as being above the clouds anymore. The gritty things they had to do to survive the post-war chaos, like dealing on the black market, kind of ruined that sacred image. Not to mention the shadow of their pre-war military leadership and the baggage of unresolved war responsibility still hangs over some of these historic names. Which leaves us with a really profound question to think about. Can a 2,000-year-old tree survive if its branches are never grafted back on? The extreme measures of 1947 successfully saved Emperor Hirohito and helped transition Japan into a modern democracy. But they fundamentally altered the DNA of the entire imperial system. And we are watching, right now, in real time, to see if that pruned tree can keep growing, or if the cure from 1947 is what ultimately doomed the dynasty.